Друзья, добрый день! Рады приветствовать вас на нашем вебинаре. Мы можем его начинать, но перед тем, как мы начнем, хотел спросить, слышно ли меня нормально, все ли в порядке со звуком и со связью. Напишите, пожалуйста, в чат. Отлично. Думаю, что если у одного человека все слышно, то, скорее всего, у всех остальных все в порядке тоже. Еще раз рад приветствовать вас на нашем мероприятии. Очень рад видеть такое большое количество посетителей. Всегда очень приятно со всеми общаться, со всеми встречаться. В первую очередь хотел представиться. Меня зовут Виталий Степаненко. Я работаю в компании Students International, и наша компания занимается образованием за рубежом. Повестка сегодняшнего дня – это образование в Австралии, а именно обучение в университете Гриффита. И сегодня к нам присоединяется наш коллега из университета Гриффита Том Куфер. План сегодняшнего мероприятия будет таковым. Я начну с небольшого предисловия, расскажу о том, чем занимается наша компания и как мы помогаем иностранным и нашим студентам с зачислением в вузы за рубеж. Дальше я передам слово Тому, который на английском языке расскажет об обучении в Австралии, о том, что вообще ценно в получении степени в австралийском университете, расскажет о Голд Косте и Брисбене, где как раз находится университет Гриффита. И после того, как он закончит свою презентацию, она должна идти не более 25-30 минут, мы также начнем отвечать на ваши вопросы, поэтому в течение презентации вы можете спокойно писать в чат, или же у нас есть специальная секция Q&A или вопросов и ответов. Задавайте, пожалуйста, вопросы в течение презентации Тома, и как только мы закончим ее, мы сразу же на нее ответим. Сама презентация будет проходить на английском языке, но учитывая, что я говорю на русском, и я могу транслировать какие-то важные аспекты, если вы чего-то не понимаете. То есть, да, если вы вдруг не знаете или не так хорошо говорите на английском языке, пожалуйста, задавайте вопросы. В конце презентации я вернусь к вашим вопросам и отвечу на них на русском. Поэтому, думаю, можем приступать. И, как я говорил, немного расскажу о том, чем занимается наша компания. В первую очередь, наша компания существует с 1992 года, и мы начинали с того, что мы помогали студентам с поиском образовательных программ за рубежом. И наша компания как раз является официальным представителем более 500 учебных заведений за рубежом, включая Австралию, о которой мы сегодня говорим, но также мы занимаемся странами Великобритании, США, Канада, странами Европы, также странами Юго-Восточной Азии, где преподаются программы на английском языке, такие как Сингапур или же даже Китай, и Арабскими Эмиратами. Полный список стран, с которыми мы работаем и куда мы ежегодно помогаем студентам поступить, вы можете найти у нас на сайте. Если вы к нам подключились из России, Беларуси или из Казахстана, то можете воспользоваться нашим сайтом studenter.ru. Если же подключились из Украины, у нас есть также сайт на украинском языке studenter.ua. Помимо того, что мы помогаем студентам с выбором программ, мы являемся первой ступенью процесса зачисления на программу. То есть наша ежедневная работа, вот то, чем я занимаюсь, я общаюсь с приемными комиссиями разных вузов по поводу заявлений студентов, которые к ним поступают. И таким образом мы очень хорошо разбираемся в том, как и на что обращают внимание приемные комиссии университетов, что студентов нужно сдавать или не нужно сдавать для того, чтобы поступить в вузы на те или иные программы. И, конечно, когда ребята определяются, мы также помогаем со всем процессом зачисления, то есть мы подготавливаем документы, подготавливаем заявления и в итоге помогаем с получением зачисления. Ну и помимо этого мы также помогаем с получением визы в страны, куда студенты планируют поехать, потому что, наверное, многие знают, что важно не только поступить в университет, но также получить под эту программу визу, потому что это тоже считается очень серьезным шагом, и время от времени можно наткнуться на какие-то подводные камни. Но учитывая, что мы стараемся держать всех в курсе всей информации, которая доступна через разные ресурсы, включая миграционную службу Австралии, мы помогаем студентам и с этим вопросом. Ну и если вы, конечно, хотели бы сдать экзамен по английскому языку, это, скорее всего, один из единственных экзаменов, которые нужно вообще сдавать при поступлении в англоязычные вузы, экзамен Ielts, то мы тоже с этим помогаем, потому что оперируем Ielts тест-центром по всей России и в Украине, где как минимум каждые 2 недели можно сдать экзамен. И если вдруг вы не знаете, как к нему готовиться, то здесь мы тоже можем помочь. У нас работает специальная IELTS-школа, где как раз обучают тому, как сдавать и как готовиться к сдаче этого экзамена. Поэтому обращайтесь, будем рады. Сейчас я хочу поприветствовать нашего коллегу Тома, который подключился к нам из Австралии. Tom, are you able to join us?
I am, Vitaly. How are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Well, thank you. Yeah, doing very well for a Saturday evening.
That's great. Yeah, well, it's evening time in Australia, even though it's only the noon in Moscow. So it's pleasure to have you with us. I haven't seen you for a while, so yeah, it's lovely. Are you ready to start with your presentation?
I am. Just give me one moment and I'll share my screen.
That's perfect. Yeah, I'll stop sharing mine. If we have any questions along the way, I might pop in during the presentation, but otherwise you can just proceed as usual.
Excellent. All right. You should now be able to see that presentation.
Yep. Can you go into full screen? Okay.
Yeah, should be in full screen now.
Yep, it is. Perfect.
All right.
All right, you're good to go. So yeah, if there are any questions, I might pop in and we would have a bit of a chat, but otherwise we'll have a Q&A session in the end to answer all of the questions that we had.
Yep, fantastic. Excellent.
Great.
Thank you for the introduction, Vitaly.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be with everyone today, this evening or lunchtime for you all. I wanted to say welcome to Griffith University. Here you can see a fantastic photo of our students, obviously very happy to be on campus. And I think this photo represents Griffith really well because it just shows the student diversity that we have on campus. I've decided to frame this presentation slightly differently to other presentations that I've given. Rather than just running through slides, I've actually had to think about the different types of questions that we've been asked by our international students recently. So I'll first frame the discussion piece with a question, and then I'll jump into some slides which will then detail the response. These are typically the questions that we receive from our international students who are eager to study with us here at Griffith University. As Vitaly mentioned, I'm more than happy to take questions either during the presentation or at the end. So of course, the first question that we typically get is, where is the university located and how many campuses are there? Griffith is unique in that we are a multi-campus university. We have 6 campuses, 5 of which are physical, and our sixth campus is our digital campus, which of course has sort of come to the forefront of everything that we're doing at the moment with our students learning online, particularly those that are offshore and international students. I did just want to run through the names of the 6 campuses, or the 5 physical campuses, and then I'll talk a little bit about each. Our first campus there that you can see is the Gold Coast. We then have Mount Gravatt and Nathan, which are both located in Brisbane, and South Bank as well, which is located in Brisbane, and actually just sits across the river from the CBD, and that's home to the Queensland College of Art, the Griffith Film School, and the Queensland Conservatorium of Music. Our 5th physical campus is Logan, which sits between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And on the right-hand side there, you can see a map of Australia. Griffith University is located in the state of Queensland, so in the northeast corner. And our campuses stretch from Brisbane all the way down to the Gold Coast in the southeast corner of the state of Queensland. Here you can see an aerial shot of the university campus in the bottom right-hand corner. In the background, you can see the ocean, and you can sort of see the Gold Coast as we know it, the strip along the coast there. The Gold Coast campus is our largest campus, and it offers teaching and research in almost all of the disciplines that we offer. We are a comprehensive university, so we do offer over 200 different programs in a range of study areas, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as I go. The Gold Coast is home to 18,000 students, so it is our largest campus, as I mentioned. On the left-hand side of that photo, in the bottom left, you can see some buildings there. That is the Gold Coast University Hospital and also the private hospital. On the left-hand side, you can also see some coloured buildings. Those buildings were actually purpose-built for the Commonwealth Games, which happened on the Gold Coast in 2018. They're now residential. We do have some students that live there, and of course it's very close to the university, so it's obviously beneficial in a number of regards. There's also a supermarket there and some small shops. I should also mention that the Gold Coast campus is about 4.5 kilometres to the Southport CBD, which is where a number of our students will live. It is connected very well to the light rail, the tram, which runs all the way from around about Broadbeach, all the way up to the northern end of the Gold Coast, and then tucks in towards the university, where we have 2 light rail stops. It's about 10 minutes by light rail from Southport CBD through to the university. And we're also located about 60 kilometres from Brisbane. That's about 60 minutes by car. And we also have the Student Guild Intercampus bus, which travels between Nathan campus and the Gold Coast campus, and that takes about 75 minutes. One of the key selling points for the Gold Coast at the moment is that it is an attractive study destination for many students because it's considered regional. It's considered a regional city, although it has all of the modern comforts of a large city that you can expect. So we have fantastic schools, great transportation. We have an international and domestic airport, very well connected, of course, to bigger cities like Brisbane. But the fact that the Gold Coast is considered a regional centre allows international students to access an additional year of post-study work rights and to stay in Australia for a total of 3 years after graduating. Now, this isn't a given. You do have to apply for the post-study work rights visa, but by having studied in a regional centre like the Gold Coast, you are eligible for an additional year. This next aerial photo is of our Nathan campus, which was our foundation campus, so the first campus that Griffith had, and it opened in 1975. And it's quite unique in that it's actually located within a state forest. So you can see all of the white buildings there, and then, of course, all of the greenery that surrounds the university. As I mentioned, it was our foundation campus. It continues to grow. It has around 13,000 students, so slightly smaller than the Gold Coast. but it is a unique campus for students to study at. It's about 13 kilometers from Brisbane's city, and that's about 20 minutes by bus, very easily accessible again from the Brisbane CBD, where we find a lot of our students tend to live. We do have on-campus accommodation, and some of our students choose to live on campus, of course. Now, at our Nathan campus, we offer degrees in business and government, engineering and IT, environment, humanities and languages, law, and science and aviation. We also host key research centres which are committed to sustainability, Asia, and the emerging biosciences areas. So I've chosen just to highlight the two larger campuses that we have, but I did also want to talk just briefly about the digital campus. Of course, a number of our students at the moment are studying online, particularly those international students that are offshore, so that are in their home country, but have decided to begin their studies from offshore. We have over 20 years experience teaching online. So when COVID came about, in March of last year, we were quite quick and could easily transfer our teaching to the online environment because we did have quite a lot of experience in that, as I mentioned, 20 years. There's about 12,000 students that are currently enrolled in our digital campus. And of course, all of our students that are studying online from offshore or online in Australia have all of the support that they need to succeed. So we've actually ensured that every student service that is available in person is also available for our students that are studying with us online. One of the, I guess, unique things about the digital campus is that it's actually our third largest and it's our fastest growing campus as well. So students have 24/7 learning access. There's an online library, of course. They have access to rich learning environments, dedicated academic and IT support, and of course, student collaboration networks. Another question that we often get is, can you tell me about Griffith's values? Students are becoming more and more interested in the type of university that they're attending. So not just about the program itself, but also the core values of that institution. And also they want to know, how big is the university? What's the student size? So we have 4 pillars or 4 values, key values that we like to talk about at Griffith. And the first is that we are a future-focused university. So we are committed to creating an equitable and environmentally sustainable society. The second core value is that we ensure that our students are prepared for employment. And we do this through including real-life industry experiences in pretty much all of our degrees. And we also have a great range of employability initiatives to help our students be job ready. The third value that we think is very important is that we're creating global citizens. Our degrees have an international focus and they prepare you for working around the world. The fourth value that you can see there is global impact. And through our teaching and research, we support students to make a difference in the world and to have a global impact. Now, in terms of student size, as I've mentioned, we have around 18,000 students on the Gold Coast campus, about 13,000 students on our Nathan campus. And in total, across all 6 campuses, we have over 50,000 students. So we are a large university, but the fact that we have multiple campuses means that it doesn't feel like a large university because, of course, has fewer than 50,000 students. So it does feel like each campus is a small community, which I believe is really beneficial for our students. We have over 4,000 staff in total, and our students come from over 130 different nationalities. We have over 200,000 graduates. So, of course, this means that our alumni and our students have access to a large pool of people that have studied at the university, and that can oftentimes lead to employment opportunities. As I mentioned, we have over 200 degrees, and these range from undergraduate programs to postgraduate coursework. all the way through to doctoral programs, research programs, that is. How is Griffith ranked globally? This is a question that we always get asked, but it's something that I would say that you should take with a grain of salt. A university's ranking globally does not always indicate the quality of the institution. You have to remember that there are thousands and thousands of universities across the world. So in terms of our world rankings, in 4 of the largest and most credible world university rankings, Griffith consistently ranks within the top 300. So you can see here on the left, the Times Higher Education World University Rankings. We rank between 201 and 250. In terms of the university ranking by academic performance, we rank 245th. And Griffith is also ranked in the top 400 rankings in those 3 rankings that you can see there. So the academic ranking of World University, QS World University Rankings, which is probably the most well-known, we rank 303rd. And I did also want to highlight, you can see the bottom there, that Griffith is actually ranked 30th in the world by the Times Higher Education in terms of the young university rankings, and 33rd in the world in terms of the QS top 50 universities under 50 years of age. So we are, I think, punching well above our weight. I'm not going to talk too much about all of the subject rankings, but I did want to bring these up just so that you can see them in front of you. In terms of top 10 subject area rankings, we rank extremely well in hospitality and tourism management, where we're ranked #1 in the world. We rank highly in nursing and midwifery, where we're ranked #1 in Australia. And in terms of the top 50 subject area rankings, we do extremely well in marine and ocean engineering, also in law and performing arts. Now, subject rankings, where Griffith ranks in the top 100. Here you can see a long list. What I really want to highlight here is the diversity across study areas in which we excel at. So you can see, for example, that we're within the top 100 in terms of energy science and engineering, but we're also within the top 100 in terms of pharmacy and pharmacology, in terms of public health, and also sports-related subjects. So there's a huge, broad range of study areas that Griffith teaches, and we rank extremely well in terms of these different academic league tables. I've included this slide tonight because I think it's important to highlight the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings. Now, this brings together about 1,000 universities in the world which have decided to showcase their efforts to achieve or to assist in the world achieving the Sustainable Development Goals that are set out by the United Nations. So in terms of those 1,135, I believe it is, universities that have opted into this rankings, Griffith has ranked 38th in the world. So that's not too bad, again, for a university that's only 50 years of age, almost 50 years of age. So we did well in 4 rankings. We actually put forward our case to be ranked in the 4 rankings that you can see here, which are good health and well-being, reduced inequalities, peace, justice and strong institutions, partnerships and goals. And you can see how we ranked in the world across those 4 sustainable development goals. Again, these actually link back very nicely to the key pillars of the universities and what we're about. So I think that just further strengthens that what we talk about, we actually put into action, and we can be measured on this by this ranking system here. One of the most popular questions at the moment, of course, from our international students is how are students offshore starting classes at the moment? As many of you will know, the Australian borders are currently closed for the majority of international travel. So our students are all beginning their studies online, those that are offshore, of course, with the intention to finish their studies on campus once international borders open. I've included a a link on the bottom left, which highlights our flexible study options, which I think are really important as well. So if you do have a chance, I would suggest that you go and have a look at that website there. In terms of studying online, all teaching and coursework is delivered through online teaching and learning platforms that the university, again, has been using for a number of years. So we've just ramped up the amount that our students are needing to use these platforms to, one, ensure that our international students can begin their studies and that they don't have to defer their studies or take a break. And of course, to ensure that students that are onshore are also able to continue their studies in case there is any reason for them not to be able to come onto campus. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we come to the end of the presentation as well, the current state of play at Griffith and in Australia generally. So some of the ways in which we will be delivering our teaching in 2021, and of course this same way of teaching began in around March of 2020. So we do our teaching through video demonstrations. We have recorded lectures as well as live lectures, self-access tutorials. Our students have access to live peer mentoring as well, which is extremely important. We have expert guest lecturers who are coming on to speak with our students. We have, of course, case-based learning, which our students get involved in, simulations and virtual tours, interactive role-playing, and of course, work-integrated learning, but in a virtual capacity. Very importantly there, you can see that on-campus activities are available for our onshore students. So I've talked a little bit about how important employability is and graduate outcomes. And now I want to talk about how Griffith is helping students who are starting online. How are we helping them build their connections? So we do include real life industry experiences in our degrees and have a great range of employability initiatives to ensure that our students are job ready by the time they graduate, or actually even during their studies. And the way that we do this is through work integrated learning. Again, virtual work integrated learning opportunities are available for our students who are studying online. We also have internships and industry placements. We have our Griffith Industry Mentoring Program. And we offer a careers and employment service who offer a range of activities, both virtual and in person, to help prepare our students feel more comfortable when they finish their studies and go on to look for graduate employment opportunities. In terms of how our students who are offshore or who are in their home country and are studying with us online, some of the ways in which we've been able to engage with them virtually are through these activities that you can see on the right-hand side there. So we've had various photo competitions. We've had Mates Monday updates where our Griffith Mates, who are a fantastic group of students that we have on campus and who are actually off campus as well. We have some students who are studying online with us who are part of the Griffith Mates program. And it's a social inclusion program. So it's really about supporting current and new students, both international and domestic. So our Monday updates, we have them talking on Instagram, just giving a roundup about what's going on that week, what's happening on campus and keeping everyone connected. We also have opportunities for virtual coffee catch-ups with our Griffith Mates. We often do Instagram lives with guest speakers or topics of interest. We have weekend watch parties as well on Netflix to ensure our students are engaging and really generating genuine friendships while they are studying offshore or internationally. Some of the other things that I wanted to talk about briefly, we have our International Student Buddy program. And this is where we match new international students with experienced local students for social support meetings once a week. This is really important because, of course, students have questions that they would like to ask to current students, potentially not to academic staff or professional staff like myself. But these sessions are being held online as well as in person for those that are here in Australia. We also offer English help, which is free individual or one-on-one consultation with academic language specialists. We also have English language workshops which talk about speaking, listening, and academic writing, which is extremely important as well to ensure the success of our students. And we have our peer-assisted student support. And this offers learning sessions for some of the courses that students find more challenging. They're weekly 1-hour study sessions that are facilitated by current students, current senior level students. Now, of course, if you've done your homework, you probably already know what program you're interested in, or at least the study area. But some students do ask us, what areas of study does Griffith have? And are all programs available next trimester? So rather than highlighting all 200 programs that we offer, I thought I would just highlight here the 10 different areas of study: architecture, construction and planning, criminology and law, education, engineering, IT and aviation, business and government, humanities and language, medicine, dentistry and health, music and performing arts, science and environment, visual and creative arts. So again, you can see here that we offer a broad range of study areas. Now, this is just a taste, I guess, or to show you the programs that are not available from offshore, or for students that are thinking of beginning their studies with us from offshore. I apologize here, there is a typo there, so it should say trimester 2 programs not available from offshore. But here you can see, for example, that we do not offer the Bachelor of Architectural Design for international students to begin from offshore, just due to how hands-on this program is. And this also, for example, the Bachelor of Marine Science, and that's because there's a large amount of field work and hands-on laboratory work that is required for this program. So here you can see a number of different programs that are unfortunately not available for students to begin from offshore. On the right-hand side, you can also see that some of our programs can be offered for students studying with us from offshore or internationally, but can only be partially delivered. And a lot of this has to do with the accreditation that these programs have by peak bodies. So for instance, you can see here that the first year of the following programs can be undertaken offshore, but students must be here by the second year, or they do need to take a leave of absence at this point in time. Now, of course, as we know, the situation continues to change. So we may find that we have more programs that are added to the list of programs that cannot be started from offshore, or we might find that some of the programs here that can only be taught in their first year, there may be greater flexibility moving forward. Again, with COVID, we just don't know. It's an ever-changing situation. And so we are trying to do our best to accommodate all of the requests from our students and to ensure that students do not need to pause or take a break from their studies. Of course, what we would like you to do is continue on with your academic and career goals. Now, Vitaly's talked a little bit about the Ielts preparation that Students International have and the Ielts school, but we also do have some English preparation programs that are taught at the Griffith English Language Institute. Just highlight this one very quickly. It is an award-winning English language institute with over 25 years of experience. We have 3 campuses plus our online campus, of course, and we enroll over 1,000 students per year. We do offer a direct entry program. So if your English does not meet the entry requirements for your university program, you can begin in our direct entry program, which will allow you to progress into the university without having to sit an English language proficiency exam again. We have 10 intakes per year, and these intakes happen every 5 years. So every 5 weeks, sorry. All of our Griffith English Language Institute students, or GELI students, have access to the university facilities. We do also have some other accepted English language pathways. So we do accept the Navitas English as an English pathway, and also our the Brown's English Language School, for example. Of course, people that are studying at Brown's English Language School will be here in Australia. Another very popular question that we have: what are the scholarship opportunities that the university has for international students? In 2021, we were fortunate enough to have the following 3 scholarships, and we have recently announced that these scholarships will continue for students who are going to commence their studies in 2022. The first scholarship is our International Student Academic Merit Scholarship, and this scholarship covers 20% of tuition fees for the duration of the student's program. So if your program is 3 years in duration, you will be eligible for a 20% reduction in your tuition fees for the duration of those 3 years. Of course, you do have to meet the academic requirements to be eligible for this program, and you must maintain that same GPA to be able to continue to receive this scholarship for the duration of the program. The second scholarship that you see there is our Academic Excellence Scholarship, which is of the value of 25% of tuition fees for the duration of the program. And both academic merit and academic excellence scholarships are awarded at the time of program offer. So this means that you do not need to submit a separate scholarship application. The international admissions officers will look at your GPA from your previous study, and they will decide based on your GPA whether you are eligible for either of these 2 scholarships. The third scholarship that you see there is the Griffith Remarkable Scholarship, and this is the most sought after scholarship. It's for outstanding international students who are applying for undergraduate and postgraduate coursework programs at Griffith University. The scholarship covers 50% of tuition fees for the duration of the program, and there are 3 application rounds per year. I should point out that Griffith works on a trimester academic model, which means that we have 3 intakes during the calendar year. Most of our programs will have intakes in trimester 1 and 2, and some of our programs have intakes in trimester 3. But the 3rd trimester allows students to either fast track their degree or to give them flexibility if they require to resit courses because they haven't progressed or unfortunately might not have passed those courses in previous trimesters. The Griffith Remarkable Scholarship does require a separate application. So when you receive your letter of offer, you can then apply for the Griffith Remarkable Scholarship, and it will ask you to submit a personal statement. And that personal statement is going to be a way for you to show why you are the most deserved person for that remarkable scholarship. And it might be because you have done some fantastic community work. It might be because you feel that you will be able to give back to the university when you return back to Russia in terms of talking to people about your experience in Australia and generating interest in Griffith University. There are a range of reasons why you may be awarded this scholarship. Of course, GPA is one of those. And the second one is through your personal statement where you're able to sell yourself as the best candidate for this remarkable scholarship. This bit here is a little bit technical. In terms of flexible study options, I did say that you should possibly visit the website that you would have seen before. But basically, we recognize that because of COVID, there are a lot of changes that have happened in the world. And we understand that certain testing centers, English language testing centers, might have been closed for a time. And for example, in that first point there, you can see that we are accepting non-standard English language tests like Duolingo, Cambridge LinguaSkill, Ielts Indicator, or the TOEFL Home Edition. Now, this doesn't mean that we will forever accept these, but for the time being, we are. We're also accepting provisional and predicted academic results where there are delays in examination results. We've reduced our deposit fee so that students no longer have to pay the full trimester tuition fee and instead pay a $3,000 deposit fee plus their overseas student health cover. Also, with our withdrawals for students who have offers to commence in 2021, if you are outside of Australia and travel restrictions prevent you from traveling to Australia to commence your program, you can actually withdraw from your enrolment up until census date with no financial penalty. So what's happening on campus, and are students onshore starting to return to campus? Now, of course, I'm very happy to say that actually since about May of last year, since about May, June, July, we had a slow staged progression where our university teaching staff and professional staff and our students actually started coming back to engage on campus through learning activities. Our libraries were open, our GP service was open, our counselling services began to open up for face-to-face interactions. And of course, smaller scale teaching was able to be undertaken for students that are here onshore with us. Having said that, we do not anticipate that there will be on-campus large-scale lectures of over 100 students taking place in 2021. So I've sped through about 30 slides, and now I'm available to take any questions that you might have about studying at Griffith. So Vitaly, over to you to facilitate the questions, if you don't mind.
No problem, Tom. Thank you for doing the presentation. We do have a few questions that from our participants. The first one is from Elena. She's asking, what does study look like for onshore students, on campus, digital, or a mix? If it's a mix, what is the breakdown for online studies and on-campus studies? And well, there's a second question, but now let's answer this one first.
Yeah, sure. So that's a good segue, I guess, from the snapshot that I've just given there.
Yeah.
For our students that are here with us in Australia and onshore, you know, to be honest with you, on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane, life is quite normal. Of course, we are having to be responsible and socially distant when we are on campus and off campus, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, it's back to normal. Our students are attending class as they would normally do, particularly for tutorials, which are our small, sort of more intimate classes of around 20 to 25 students. Those are held in person for the large majority. Of course, students that are studying programs that have laboratories or field work, where possible, those are all now being held as well on campus in a safe environment. So again, socially distant, and we're adhering to all of the rules and regulations that are set out by Queensland Health and the state government. So for our onshore students, to be honest with you, it is fairly normal. There is, of course, an online or virtual component that our students will engage in, and that typically is for our lectures. So lectures are normally where you would have a large group of students sitting in a big theatre or auditorium and listening to an academic present about a topic area. Those are now taking place online. We also have a lot of tutorials that are taking place virtually because we now have a challenge where we have students that are both offshore and onshore. And so for us and for all Australian institutions, the challenge is how do we ensure that those students are interacting with one another, albeit from different parts of the world. So we have students that are studying with us from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, that are studying with us online. And then we have all of our students that are here onshore as well. So we're really trying to engage and create a community with everybody. In terms of the percentage, it would really vary. So the percentage of online versus in person, it will vary by program.
Well, it totally makes sense that depending on how much practical or how big is the practical component of the course, you would have to be on campus or you could do it online. But from what I can assume, even if students have to study on campus, they can also actually use all the online facilities that are available to them through the university, such as lecture recordings or just communicating with tutors or lecturers through the specific platform. So this is something that I don't typically see in universities in Russia and Ukraine. It's slowly starting up to come up to us, but you don't always see the ability for students to actually re-listen to the lecture that they've been to, or they might have not been to, because sometimes you do miss a lecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is very convenient for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think university education is changing in that way. You know, we've sort of been forced to do things in a virtual fashion now, and there are a number of benefits that have for students, particularly students where English is not their first language. And as you mentioned, they can watch a recording of a lecture, you know, over and over and over again until they understand all of the concepts. So there are definite benefits of that mixed mode learning, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for elaborating on that. The second question that Alina had was about Griffith Rankings. I know that you covered it already within your presentation, but can you just summarize it just once again?
Sure. So in terms of our overall rankings, we typically rank within the top 2% of the world in terms of our overall rankings. And that generally places us between the top 300 and top 400 universities in all of the major academic league tables. The two other rankings that I mentioned were the Times Higher Education Young Universities ranking, and also the QS top 50 universities under the age of 50, where we rank about 30th in those. So that really shows that we're a young university that is innovative and that is hungry to be one of the top universities in the world, and we're doing that very quickly.
Yeah, I guess the rate that you're going through the rankings is that's what matters, because there are some universities that have been existent for like hundreds of years, and yeah, obviously competing with those universities is a little bit tough. But I guess you're doing it well, which is a very good sign.
Yeah, and look, I think the rankings you need to take with a grain of salt. The rankings are often based on research outputs. They're also based on academic perception of an institution. So for an undergraduate student who is looking to begin a bachelor level program, which is really going to be mainly coursework, you should be looking at teaching excellence rather than rankings. I think that's very important, that you don't get hung up on, right, what is the ranking of this university? Because again, as an undergraduate student, it won't be until the tail end of your degree that you'll have an opportunity to engage in, you know, in research. So yeah, take the rankings with a grain of salt. And I personally would be really looking in great detail at the specific program or study area that you're looking to get into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just one last question about the rankings. How is the university positioned among other Australian universities?
Yeah, so I would say that Griffith sits in the middle of the universities in Australia. There are 40, I want to say 41 universities in Australia. I think that's pretty close.
Yep.
About 39 public universities and 2 private universities, 2 or 3 private universities. And we probably sit in the middle. You have universities that are part of the group of 8, which tend to be research intensive universities that rank very highly. And then you have your mid-tier universities like Griffith University that rank extremely well in terms of world university rankings. And then you have some other universities that are sort of sitting at the tail and still fantastic in terms of quality. But yeah, I would say Griffith sits in the middle, really.
That's great. So I would say that Griffith has probably one of the best price to quality ratios in Australia, because there are universities that are positioned a bit higher, but the cost of studies in there is is way high as well. So Griffith sits somewhere in a good middle where you can get all the benefits of very good quality education, while you at the same time you don't have to pay as much in tuition costs. And regarding the tuition costs, we do have a question. How much does it actually cost to study at Griffith? Because you mentioned you have amazing scholarships and students should definitely use them. But how much does it actually cost to study at Griffith?
Yeah, great question. So it will depend on the program of study. So for example, if you're looking to study the Doctor of Medicine, that will be far more expensive than a Bachelor of Business, for example. So to give you an indication, it's probably roughly around 15,000 Australian dollars per trimester. So in a full year, so 2 trimesters in the year, you will be paying about 30,000 Australian dollars in tuition fees. And I should highlight there as well that the tuition fees do not cover the cost of living. So things like your rent, groceries, telephone, etc. Those are additional costs that you need to incur.
Absolutely. But, well, there are a couple of caveats to that, because, well, if you're studying in Australia, you are also able to work part-time, which could also cover some of the costs related to living in Australia, which is a good thing. And well, yeah, if you're studying your degree online right now, you could use the scholarships, and you could also reduce your living expenses, because you have the opportunity to do everything from your home, where the expenses are not as high, for example, as in Australia.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. I think for students that are considering studying in Australia, there's actually no better time than now for those same reasons that you said. Economically, of course, we have fantastic scholarships. Students don't need to think about their cost of living changing because it will be as per normal what they're used to at the moment. And for students that are here in Australia, yes, you're right. They can work 40 hours per fortnight, or roughly about 20 hours per week during the trimester. And then during the holidays, they can work an unlimited number of hours. So that is one way to supplement your living costs.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And what is the minimal wage in Australia at the moment?
Wow, you've got me on that one. I think the minimum wage is probably around $20. It might be $21 per hour, if I'm not mistaken, roughly around there. So, look, in terms of wages, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, if you're earning $20, at least $20 an hour, and you're just working part-time, you could definitely substitute quite a bit of costs and living expenses, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good thing. We've got another question regarding, well, I would assume it's about the scholarship. What is the best way to increase the chances of getting a scholarship, except for a high GPA? Is there any other way to get a scholarship, or is it just heavily GPA based?
So the first 2 scholarships that I mentioned, which are for 20% or 25% of the tuition fees, those are purely based on GPA, or prior academic performance. So if you have completed your studies, there's not much you can do. It is what it is. But if you haven't completed your studies, of course, study hard and try and bring up your GPA so that you can receive one of those 2 scholarships. In terms of the remarkable scholarship, which is to the value of 50% of the total tuition fees for the duration of your postgraduate coursework or undergraduate coursework program, that is based on GPA as well. But there is the additional opportunity for students to put forward their case as to why they are the best candidate and why they should receive that scholarship. Everybody's situation is different, of course. So you need to think about the reasons why you are the best candidate for that. And again, as I mentioned, it could be that you are involved in a lot of community organizations and you give back to the community. And for that reason, you feel that you are deserved of the scholarship. Or it might be because, you know, you were the most academically high achieving student in your high school or in your undergraduate program. You know, there are a range of reasons why students are awarded the remarkable scholarship.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. We've got another question from Dimitri, and he's asking, is it proper to mention immigrational intentions and plan to stay in Australia after graduation in motivational letter while applying? I know that we can't really give any advice on that, but we do have Gte Checks, which is genuine temporary entrance checks during the application stage. For those who don't know what it is, this is pretty much, we have to make sure that the students' intentions to study in Australia are real. So they're not solely going to Australia to immigrate. Their intention is to study. But Australia does offer multiple opportunities in terms of getting work experience upon completion of their studies within the country, which is offered by a 485 visa, which is a graduate visa, which allows students to work for at least 2 years in Australia. But from what I know, they can actually stay for 3 years if they complete their studies on Gold Coast, which is considered as a regional city. And if you complete your studies in Australia and your studies are at least 2 years in duration, and you apply for this visa, you can get work experience and full-time working rights upon completion of your studies, which is a good thing. But getting back to the question that Dimitri asked, so do you have any comments to that, Tom?
I think you have probably said as much as we can say, Vitaly. Of course, the only thing I would add there is of course opportunities once a student potentially can be opportunities once the student has finished the 485 post-study work rights visa. Potentially companies might seek to sponsor a graduate, and for that reason they may then be able to stay in Australia for an additional time. But yes, the ultimate goal of international students is, of course, to complete their studies in Australia, to gain some work experience, and then to return home.
Makes sense. And if you, I would just add to this, because this is what I typically say to some of the people that I talk to. If you have an intention to immigrate to Australia, you would probably have to talk to the immigration agent first, because they know everything about immigration policies in Australia, and they could advise, they could provide a better advice in terms of that. But if you're planning to get a education in Australia, this is where you can come to us. We can advise on what course to choose, what would be more suitable to you, and we will also explain what are the prospects upon completion of your studies, such as like 485 visa, etc. So yeah, absolutely do that. We've got a question from Julia. She was asking about the cost of studies, which we've already answered. Do you have PhD programs at the moment?
Do we have what programs, sorry?
PhD programs.
Yes, yeah, definitely we do. So in Australia, if I just talk generally about Australian universities, most Australian universities will have a range of research programs. There is what we call a bachelor honours degree, which can be available for some disciplines. And that is a year-long research program for students who have completed a bachelor's degree that doesn't have any research component to it. We also have Masters by Research, which is typically between a year and 2 years. which is a postgraduate research program, or we have doctoral studies, a PhD, which is between 3 and 4 years, and that is entirely research based. And for students that are looking at a PhD in Australia, you actually don't need to have completed a master's degree. That's something that I find students are not aware of, but you do need to have completed a substantial amount of research as part of your bachelor program. And of course, to be competitive for research scholarships, you do need to have published, attended conferences, etc., to be, in good standing and to be eligible to apply for a research scholarship. We offer research or PhD programs in a range of areas, pretty much across all those 10 study areas that I mentioned before. We will have programs or areas of research centers. I think we have around 30 research centers, if I'm not mistaken, at Griffith University. And our academic staff are always looking for quality research students to engage in research projects with them.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Tom. I would just like to add one thing to this, because you mentioned that if you want to apply for a PhD program at Griffith, you need to have completed at least a bachelor's degree with a substantial amount of research in there. Russian students sometimes complete a specialist degree, which is similar to a bachelor with honors in Australia, which is typically 1 or 2 years more in duration in comparison to a regular bachelor's. And based on our experience and sending applications for PhD programs, these degrees are typically accepted by universities as sufficient for PhD studies, which is typically a good thing.
Yeah, good point. I think the other thing as well that is worth mentioning is that the application process for a PhD candidate is slightly different to somebody who is looking to apply for a bachelor or a master's by coursework. So for PhD candidates or people that are interested to complete a research program, you actually need to find your research supervisor. That's not something that the university will do. So you will need to find that research supervisor, contact them via email, propose your research project and begin a conversation with them. And as part of your application to the university for the PhD program, you need to provide confirmation from that prospective research supervisor that they have capacity to supervise your PhD program. So it is a slightly different application process and can take a fair amount of time longer in terms of getting a response from the university, and of course finding a supervisor that's willing to take you on can take a little bit longer as well.
Makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. I just wanted to say something in Russia regarding like any of the questions that our attendees might have. Друзья, если вдруг мы не успеем на ваши вопросы ответить, то вы можете их задать нам лично. Я только что скинул ссылку в наш чат, на которую вы можете нажать и записаться на индивидуальную консультацию к нам, потому что время подходит немножко к концу, мы еще успеем ответить на несколько вопросов, и после этого будем постепенно завершать наше мероприятие. Поэтому не стесняйтесь, нажимайте на ссылку и записывайтесь на консультацию, и мы с вами тогда сможем уже в другое удобное для вас время созвониться или встретиться, или списаться для того, чтобы вы получили ответы на все ваши вопросы, потому что я понимаю, не всегда можно на все вопросы ответить во время такого мероприятия. All right, Tom, I just mentioned that now we are slowly running out of time. We've got time for just a couple of more questions. And one of the questions that we have is, what are the requirements to apply for bachelor and master degrees, and what IELTS level should students have to apply directly to the programs?
Yeah, cool. Good question. It will depend on the program. So some of our programs require a higher English language proficiency. For example, education. For example, Doctor of Medicine, as another example, requires a much higher level of English. Otherwise, typically a standard program will be 6.5 overall with no band below 6.0. That's for our standard programs in terms of IELTS scores. I can also see here a great question, which I think is worthwhile answering, Vitaly, if you don't mind. How does online education account in terms of future migration to Australia?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's probably a good one just to touch on. And it's not so much about future migration, but I wanted to talk about what happens with a student who begins their studies online. And this is specific to Griffith. Some other Australian universities might have a different process. But when a student applies to Griffith University and decides they will accept their offer to study, once they accept their offer, we require the student to apply for their Australian student visa straight away, even though they will not be traveling to Australia for a duration of time, of course, until international travel begins again. But the online component of your studies, it will be counted towards your time in Australia, if you'd like to call it that, to be eligible for your post-study work rights visa. To be eligible for a post-study work rights visa, you must complete a program that is a minimum duration of 2 years of study. And so if you begin your studies online, those 2 years begin at the point when your visa was issued and when you began your studies. So I think that's, hopefully I'm making myself clear there. Otherwise, maybe you can explain that one in Russian as well, Vitaly, because it's quite an important one.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll do that in Russian. Друзья, для того, чтобы подать заявление на визу выпускника, то есть рабочую визу после окончания учебы, есть такое правило, что студенты должны пройти обучение очно, то есть на территории Австралии, как минимум двухгодичную программу. Но в связи с ситуацией с коронавирусом австралийское правительство поменяло немного правила, и то обучение, которое вы начинаете и проходите онлайн из-за ситуации с коронавирусом, то есть когда вы не можете физически поехать на учебу в Австралию, это обучение будет засчитываться, как будто вы учитесь на территории Австралии. Таким образом, если вдруг, допустим, вы начинаете учебу онлайн и не можете поехать в Австралию из-за коронавируса и проучитесь, допустим, 2 года здесь, и закончите полностью программу, то вы можете претендовать на вот эту визу, даже несмотря на то, что вы, грубо говоря, физически не находились в стране. Но это при условии, что вы это делаете, пока границы закрыты. То есть как только границы откроются, то тогда вам нужно будет приехать на учебу. Для этого, естественно, нужна студенческая виза. Именно поэтому мы сейчас все визовые заявления подаем для наших студентов, даже которые начинают учиться онлайн. До начала учебы. И когда вы закончите программу, то вам засчитают как онлайн-обучение, какую-то часть, которую вы прошли здесь, и также офлайн-обучение уже на территории Австралии. Надеюсь, что этот момент понятен. Right. Yep. I'm done with this question. I wanted to actually move to another question that we have. It's regarding admission requirements. Dmitry was asking, is it possible to apply for a master's degree if they don't have a relevant education at Griffith? Because one of his friends, he started a Master of Information Technology at Monash University while not having an IT background.
Yeah, good question. So some of our master's programs will allow students to begin studies in the master's program without a relevant background, and others won't. So for example, the Master of Professional Engineering does require students to have a background in engineering, but you can move around a little bit. So for example, if you were an industrial engineer, you may then be able to do the Master of Professional Engineering in civil engineering, for example. Master of Business, for example, that's quite broad, and that does allow students from any discipline to begin their studies in that master's program. So yes, you're right. It will depend on the program that you're interested in studying, but some master's programs will allow students to go into them without having a background, an undergraduate program in that same area.
Yeah, I would say from my personal experience in dealing with different destinations, Australia probably offers the biggest range of master's degrees that are available to students that do not have relevant background. So yeah, if you're looking for a master's degree and you're looking to requalify at this level, then Australia is probably one of the best destinations to do it in. Yeah, no, not every single master's degree is available to every single student, such as engineering, as you mentioned. Engineering is typically is available to students who have engineering background, but if you don't have relative engineering background, then you would probably have to do a bachelor's degree first in order to get into master's.
Yeah, I think maybe the only exception there would be our master's qualifying program, which will allow students to begin their studies at Griffith College in what we call a master's qualifying program, which is a year of study. So it is an additional year of study, but it then allows you to go into the program of your preference without having as much background knowledge as a full bachelor degree.
Okay, yeah, so students should definitely take this program into account when applying.
That's right, yeah.
That's perfect. And just one last question we've got from the parents. How do you guys convert a 100-point GPA into a 7-point GPA? Do students actually have to convert the GPA themselves, or is it done by the admissions?
Yeah, this will be done by the admissions team. And so to give you an answer, I can't tell you exactly what that translation would be unless I sit down and look at the transcript, because a 100-point scale, it might not be as easy as a 50 mark is passing. It might be a 60 mark is passing. So we will adjust those scales depending on the academic grades of each institution. And that will then allow us to assess the eligibility for entry into the program.
Makes sense. So, well, but the main point is that students don't have to do it themselves. Everything is done by the admissions.
That's right. That's right. And look, I think that's a good opportunity for us to also talk a little bit about Students International. Of course, you're able to facilitate the application process for the students. And take, of course, some of that burden away from them in terms of entry requirements. I can have that discussion with you offline about a student's application and potentially give you an indication of if they will be eligible. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to apply to the university.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so I guess we went through most of the questions. We might have some left, but we've been running for about an hour and 15 minutes, so we'll be ending our event in a couple of minutes. I'd just like to thank you, Tom, for joining us, because I know it's late in Australia and it's Saturday. It's great that you've managed to join us and explain everything about studying in Australia and studying in Griffith University. So thank you for this.
Thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, just thank you for everyone for attending. And of course, if there are any questions, please reach out to Vitaly and his team, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we'll be ending the event now. I'm just going to say a couple of words in Russian. And yes. Друзья, спасибо вам большое за большое количество хороших вопросов. Надеюсь, что наши ответы добавили вам знаний, и вы лучше начали разбираться вообще в образовании за рубежом и в том, что доступно в Австралии. И, конечно, если вдруг вы захотите узнать еще больше, пожалуйста, не стесняйтесь, связывайтесь с нами. Вы сможете или же записаться на индивидуальную консультацию по ссылке в чате, или же по контактным данным тоже в чате. Вот, можете обратиться по электронной почте или через WhatsApp, или же по телефону. У нас большое количество представительств по всей России и Украине, то есть вы можете, если вдруг вы живете в других городах, вы всегда можете прийти к нам в офис или позвонить туда для того, чтобы получить более детальную информацию, но при этом общаться в своей временной зоне. И да, рады были всех вас видеть, и до новых встреч.